right, good evening, everyone. Tony Gonzalez, Chair of the Planning Board, calling tonight's meeting, January 7th, 2025. Quickly, we'll review the agenda. We have return to ZBA, property 244 and 252 Warren Ave. We'll review and accept the minutes of last month's meeting. A lot release, Mia Meadows, proposed zoning change for the MBTA Communities Multifamily Overlay District. And then we have return to ZBA 244 and 255 Warren Ave. Return to ZBA 1003 Crescent Street. Site plan review for 1380 Main Street. Another site plan review for 1005 Belmont Street. And then lastly, definitive subdivision for 0 Westnut Street, Meadowwoods, Matt Flaherty Way. Okay. Start with a roll call for the board members. Yolanda Spinola, as far as we know, will not be present this evening. See Jim
Here.
Sweeney. Okay, Marty Crowell,
Here.
Matthew Gallagher,
Here.
and Tony Gonzalez present. Do we have someone new from the fire department on we can introduce in place of Chief Williams' retirement?
If there is a new fire representative, I do not know their name. So if you could use the raise your hand icon, that would be helpful in understanding or locating you. But at the moment, I'm not seeing that. So.
Okay, so I'm gonna change the agenda around just a little bit. Can I get a motion to accept the minutes from last November 19th and December 3rd's meeting?
Motion to accept November and December meeting minutes.
Okay.
Second.
All right, roll call. Jim,
Yes.
Marty,
Yes.
Matthew,
Yes.
Tony. All right, thank you. Thanks, John. Next up, we have we'll do the lot release. Mia Meadows, lots 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Lot release. Is there a motion? Do we need more information on these lot releases? Would that be helpful?
Yes.
Yeah, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Evan, you want to take
Sure.
the lead?
Yep, this is Mia Meadows. This is the subdivision over on North Quincy Street that was approved back in September, I believe. They've been working hard over there. It's consisted of 2 separate dead-end roads. One of the roads is almost complete now, so they're looking for their first batch of lots to be released so they can continue working. So as the chair said, they're looking to release lots 8 through 17. You guys will still be holding 1 through 7 and lot 18. The work has been inspected by the DPW and everything is in order for these lots to be released.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion?
Motion to accept.
Second.
All right, roll call. James,
Yes.
Marty,
Yes.
Matthew,
Yes.
Tony, yes. Okay, and then brings us to the proposed zoning change, the MBTA Communities Multifamily Overlay District. And Mr. May, is this you?
Yes, it is, Madam Chair. For the board members, we had extended the public hearing another month to this date because you had not received the full text of the proposed overlay ordinance. And that information was sent to you right after the last month's meeting. And hopefully you've had a chance to review it. The overlay is proposed to bring us into compliance with the new MBTA Communities Act. We have met with the city's ordinance committee. The ordinance committee has voted favorably for this. I'm hoping that the planning board will also vote favorably now that you've read the language, and we can move on to a second reading in city council. You might remember that the ordinance is as the language says, is an overlay district. So the base district stays in place underneath, and developers will have, or property owners will have the choice of using either the overlay district or the base district if they wish to build. The overlay district does not have all the bells and whistles that we've established for the new form-based code, which is also under review by the ordinance committee, but it gets us through the Commonwealth process, and we have made an application based on the existing language for their referral, or the Commonwealth review. So if there aren't any questions, I hope we will be able to. We took a lot of testimony and a lot of discussion at the last meeting, and hopefully we'll be able to close this hearing and have a final vote on it this evening.
I did read over it, but I might need some details on any changes or additions to this. And did we get, because the last time we heard on the meeting, we were going to request an extension because we had a deadline as of December 31st.
We have filed the draft with the Commonwealth and all the related documents. They are aware of this. That is actually their recommendation. And we will know in 30 days what their review has to say. But they're not giving us a formal extension.
You feel like because we submitted something, we'll be able to continue working on this?
Oh, yes.
And
city council plans to have this done by the end of January. So January 27th is the projected third reading and final vote on the ordinance.
And so it says to create and enhance walkable neighborhoods in the MBTA station areas. So can you walk us through the station areas and where this 344 acres in size is mostly concentrated in?
As you saw in the last presentation that we did last, and I'm sorry I don't have it available to me, but this area includes a large area around the downtown transit station, MBTA station, and includes a large portion of land around the Campello MBTA train station. Let me see if I can find a copy of the presentation. I'm sorry, I got disconnected from the server. But while I'm searching, you can ask additional questions.
So I know you had included Campello in downtown, and then we had the Montello area, which has the most land for this type of a project. But what was sent to us?
Yes, we've just kicked off a planning process for the Campello neighborhood, or for the Montello neighborhood, and we have additional meetings coming up later this month and into early February, where we will have a master plan completed and a formal zoning recommendation that will then come back to you and to City Council for review and approval.
So I know this is supposed to generate a lot of revenue for the city, along with the Carney Brothers area, if that ever takes off. But and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but is there any projections, Rob, on how much revenue this plan could bring to the city?
I have not done any projections. I can certainly see what we can find out for you based on the current development pattern that we see going on. But it should be, if there are more buildings built, there will be substantially more revenue coming into the city. We're currently doing an analysis of the fairgrounds right now, but we can come back and take a look at these two, both as the overlay and as form-based code.
Yeah. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but it's too bad we hadn't put that casino there, because there would not be as much traffic as something else that's going to draw into that area, and we've already been generating revenue. But anyway, on to the next. Other questions from board members?
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I may. Rob, has there been any kickback on long-term implications if the full rollout doesn't come sooner than later? And if so, can we make amendments on the fly to this?
We can make amendments as we go along through the process. And that becomes a recommendation to city council. And
Okay.
I'm sorry, there it is. I'm trying to find the presentation. Or the maps.
So while he's pulling that up, Jim, when you said the full rollout, you mean including Montello or just the draft that we presented and then being able to
Well,
finalize?
essentially Montello is going to be the same thing. So it's just going to be, however they've mapped it out, it's going to, basically conform to the same form-based, if I'm not mistaken. Rob, am I correct?
Yes, it will.
So
That's what's being proposed for Montello, yes.
So essentially, we just add that piece on later. However, if there's any, I'm just wondering, trying to pick Rob's brain, if we come to an instance where a business wants to come in, there really isn't the right zone for it. Could we, is that going to have to go? I don't know. If this is in a longer term use, is this something that's going to have to rifle through zoning, or should we just make an amendment change?
As I've had conversations with the current ordinance committee chair, and hopefully the future ordinance committee chair will be assigned shortly. The overlay district is a stopgap measure, and so it's our goal to work with city council to have the form-based code adopted by March or April. We've brought in or bringing in consultants to help them analyze the form-based code. It is pretty technical, and they'll need some additional resources to better understand that. And I found the presentation, or I found the maps, excuse me. So I'm going to share that, hopefully. So this is the downtown section of the city. Everything within the purple boundary is in the overlay district. There's some strange line alignments, and that's because we need to pick properties that could support the redevelopment. Unlike the form-based code, where we're creating a whole new code, whole new zone for downtown, this overlay district is looking specifically at parcels of property that could be redeveloped into the future. So that's why we have a different map arrangement here. And then in the Campello neighborhood, here you see the MBTA commuter rail station. And again, along in Campello, between Warren Avenue and the tracks on the east side. And then there's some property that spills over on the other side of the river, or other side of the tracks, that Walkover Commons is right here to give you an idea of where we are. And this is the area south of Perkins Street.
Okay, so I guess, my question would be, let's just say as we move on with this, and even this is very similar to the form-based, correct, Rob? Essentially just doesn't have all the bells and whistles.
The maps, yes, that's correct.
So, what if we slowly start identifying other areas? How fluid are these boundaries?
These boundaries will bring us into 100% compliance with the Commonwealth. We will meet our targets. Form-based code, on the other hand, is something that is bigger and better. And so not only will we have downtown, the downtown Trout Brook and the Campello and the Southern Main Street corridor, we'll also see large chunks of the Montello area rezoned for form-based code, hopefully, and an area that we call Lovett Brook, which is the land around the Good Samaritan Hospital. The form-based code is written in such a way that it can be mapped in multiple areas in the city of Brockton, not just downtown.
Okay,
but right now we're just talking about the overlay district at this point.
So
that's what's in front of you this evening.
would any amendments need to see zoning as far as the whole plan, or is that the planning board that would make that change? I'm assuming the planning board.
If there's any amendments that the planning board would like to see to the to the overlay district, tonight is the night, the time to make those, before the city council has its second reading.
Well, I've got some suggestions, and I don't know how the board feels about it, but at some point I'd like to bring it up, Madam Chair.
Please go ahead.
So we've got a lot of restaurants on Main Street. Some of them have rooftop signs. I know that's kind of been an issue, but I would like to see for a restaurant only, the ability on Main Street only to have a rooftop sign.
And Evan, I hope you're taking notes. Or Isaiah, thank you. You're there.
I think it just gives it that classic feel. At one point, it used to be a well-traveled road, and I think it brings a little more life to the street.
So, Madam Chair, if I believe we consider that a motion, we would need a second, and then the members of the board would need to vote on that as a potential amendment to the text language.
All right, is there a second to the signage for restaurants only for rooftop
I'd
business?
second that, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. Roll call. Jim?
Thank you, Marty.
Yes.
Marty?
Yes.
Matthew? You're on mute.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Tony, yes, so that's for the signage. So
Great idea, Jim.
Thank you.
yeah, you come up with some good ones, Jim.
Appreciate it.
Now, you said any additions or changes have to be added now, but what about you said that Montello would come in on the spring? Is that noted in this
No,
plan?
to the overlay district
Okay.
before council votes on it. If we would like to put the overlay district onto Montello, that would be a separate ordinance. And we could do that in the future, or we can wait until we map the Montello district for form-based code and come back at that later this spring.
Okay. All right,
And the reason why there's a delay is that we started the planning process later, but the state has funded us to do the planning in that neighborhood. And we're doing a very extensive outreach to the community, have had several public meetings so far, and have gotten some really good community participation, which is what we want, because this master plan and the zoning should reflect what the community wants, and we're getting there rather quickly.
okay. Any other questions from the board before we open up to public?
Not me.
All right, anybody with their hands raised?
Madam Chair, we did take public testimony at the last meeting. I don't know if we didn't close the public testimony portion, but if people would like to make public testimony regarding the overlay district, MBTA Communities Overlay District, please use the raise your hand icon, and we will unlock your mic and take comments at that time. Hang on just a second. I'm in the wrong category. There you are. Veronica, your mic should be open now.
Thank you, everybody. I'm really assuming that this is just going to go through as a rubber stamp, because there's no other option for the city with the time constraint that we're under. I'm glad that we've put forth a request for an extension on the form-based code, because this overlay district, I'm highly concerned. I'm one of the residents inside the overlay district, and I can't figure out from what I read online what this means for my property and what it means for the properties next to me. And it's concerning. You know, I have a long history with you guys, not all good. And it's, you know, maybe you can explain, Rob, you know exactly where my property is. You know, it's inside this overlay district. What does this mean?
It means that a property owner who wants to to do multifamily residential development may do that by right. There are guidelines that are set up for setbacks, and I'm trying to open the bill now. I'm sorry.
While he's pulling that up, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone on this call. Veronica, I'm very focused on creating more revenue for the city. Taxes have gone out of control, mine included, so I'm very concerned. In my understanding of this project, it's going to generate a lot of revenue. And then also, since you're in this area, my home is not, but it would increase your value to your property. Is that accurate, Rob, or am I?
It will add value to properties because they're allowed to develop more. Speculative development doesn't change the automatic value. It only if she exercises a development option would you see a significant change in property value. Right now, what is being proposed before City Council is that the minimum lot size for a multifamily residential development would be 5,000 square feet, that the maximum number of floors would be 3 floors with a total height of 45 feet. Each lot would have to have a minimum of 25% open space, and the maximum building coverage is 30%. The standard lot frontage is 50 feet, and the minimum setback for a front yard is 20 feet, and side yard is 10 feet on each side. And of course, they do
So
need to provide
potentially-
parking within that process.
So potentially, my quarter of an acre, or almost quarter of an acre, I could have a 3-family.
You could do a 3-family. You could probably do more than 3 families. We would have to sit down and take a look at the how the lot lays out and what square footage you have. Take into consideration the setbacks. That will give us a building box. And within that building box, you would be allowed to build up to a 3-story building with multiple units. The number of units depend greatly on how you would park the site. So you need 2 parking spaces per apartment. So depending on how many cars and where you park the cars, that really drives the number of how many residential units you can have. But it would be up to a minimum, of 15 units per acre, provided that you can park them.
All right. Thank you, Rob. Veronica, are you good?
Well, I'm looking at it as, when I looked at the form-based zoning, and correct me if I'm wrong, my property wasn't included in that.
I would have to take a look at the map. And I don't have the form base in front of me right now.
Let me explain why I'm asking.
Let's
Maybe
get
that'll
back to you.
help.
We'll get back to you
Okay. Can I
on
explain why I
the
was
form-based
asking?
map. Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay, sorry. The reason I'm asking is because, as I said in last month's meeting, everybody that can will jump to hasty construction. And that's what I'm concerned about with this stopgap. And one, you're going to be, as the planning board, you're going to be overwrought with applications for getting multi-units, and I am inundated with people wanting to buy my property sight unseen. And what I'm thinking is that these things are going to increase the demand for the properties, yes, but at the same time, price us out of our own homes. I mean, that's where we're getting. And it's hard to fathom. Yeah, I really want commercial, I want industrial, I want the city to develop tax revenue to support the city so that the residents aren't flipping the bill for everything. It's how positive city growth can move forward, and I'm understanding that we've lost a lot with industrial turning into residential, and now instead of making the industrial stay industrial and become commercial or tax revenue based, we're getting the residents to increase to the point where, I mean, I can't see it. I can't see how the stopgap adds to our resources, because it's a temporary thing. If we're going to be doing the form-based coding, which I am totally supportive of, through in March or April, I don't think stopgap is, yeah, I could put, for instance, say that I put up a 6-unit house in the middle of my property in place of what I have here. And my neighbors, which are 2 families, or, across the street, it's a little ranch, it's a Campello. They're going to be looking at a monstrosity. I don't want to be looking at a monstrosity, which I already do. I know what it looks like. And I'm afraid that this stopgap just asks for trouble. It doesn't answer any problems. The form-based coding, where there's a lot of give and take, there's a lot of construction ability for the developers, has more responsibility with it and more accountability with it, where this doesn't. And I fear what this is going to do. Honestly, that's my biggest fear. And I hope that the planning board has some more input. I mean, Mr. Sweeney saying that the signs on the rooftops on Main Street, when those rooftops are as big as they can get, I hope we consider that the restaurant's not going to have a rooftop sign that's 75 feet in the air. We got to consider the wind velocity and what else is going on. And if you can't see this rooftop sign from the street, what use is it anyway? So even though I'm not opposed to a rooftop sign, if that roof is 65 feet in the air, you're not seeing it from the street. It just becomes a risk, a wind hazard. So,
well, under this ordinance, the tallest a building can be is 45 feet.
So, but if you're driving on Main Street, you're not going to see a sign 45 feet in the air. That's my point. I'm not opposed to a rooftop sign, as I'm saying, but I'd like you to have more time to contemplate what that would mean and what limits might need to be established on it as well.
Well, we do have a
I
sign
would too, but we
committee
need
as
to
well,
come
so-
into compliance with the city or with the state,
Yeah.
state law.
As I said, I think that's what you're going to have to do. And I just hope that we have a
Sure
lot
thing.
of opportunity to criticize or critique, not criticize, but critique what you're trying to do, because I know you're trying to do what's right, and I appreciate it. I think, I'm pretty vocal on the fact that I'm working with you. I'm trying to learn, I'm trying to understand, and I'm trying to be contributing to what's going on, not inhibiting. So please take that as a
Thank you.
compliment to my faith in what you can do. And I hope you're given the opportunity to do it.
All right.
God bless
you.
you all.
Thank
Have
you,
a good
Veronica.
night.
I have Linda, has her hand raised also. And Linda, if we could get your last name also for the record. Linda, you should be able to unmute your microphone now. There you go. Linda going once. And if there's anybody else who would like to speak, please use the raise your hand icon. And Madam Chair, I do not see anybody else with their hand raised.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I'll motion to accept the MBTA committee's multifamily overlay district, in addition to the addendum that myself had made accepted by the board.
Second.
Right, roll call, James,
Yes.
Marty,
Yes.
Matthew,
Yes.
Tony, yes. All right, next, moving on, we have return to ZBA requesting a continuance. Is there a motion?
Motion to continue.
Second.
Okay, roll call, James,
Yes.
Matthew,
Yes.
Marty,
Yes.
Tony, yes. All right, next up, we have return to ZBA 1003 Crescent Street. And we have Scott Farrier representing.
I'm promoting Scott to panelist now. Oh, he already is. And Isaiah needs to accept the invitation to become a panelist. All right, Scott, the floor. Oh, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, we're all set.
Okay, Scott,
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening. Good evening, board members.
Hi,
Scott
Scott.
Farrier, Holmgren Engineering. I might also have Attorney Nazarella floating around out there. If you could promote him, Isaiah. Just so he can get paid. He doesn't get paid if he's not promoted. So
Oh, good Lord.
just
No.
trying to help him out a little bit.
Let me find him.
So while we wait for that, Madam Chair, if I can just get started, the property we have before you is 1003 Crescent Street. We were before you folks back, I believe, in April and May last year for a preliminary subdivision. The property at 1003 Crescent Street has a private street called Butler Street that goes down the property. We originally had a plan that kind of bent Butler Street down a little bit and had a cul-de-sac, and we met with the planning department and they really wanted us to keep our development within the limits of Butler Street. So we came back before you with a preliminary plan that kept the roadway within the 40-foot wide layout of Butler Street, created 5 lots, received your blessing on a preliminary plan, proceeded to go to the Board of Appeals and got denied. The main reason for denial, the fire chiefs had concerns first with no cul-de-sac being proposed on the division, and then also about the narrowness of the roadway, only being a 40-foot wide layout and then a 26-foot, I believe, pavement. They weren't happy with either of those items. So that was the main reason for denial. So we went back to the drawing board, came up with a new plan that I have before you tonight that I'll attempt to share if Evan will allow me. And
And just FYI, I have not been able to see Attorney Nazarella here.
he may have fallen asleep, Rob. I don't know. So I think we're all right without him, though. So the plan that you see before you was the original plan that you folks gave us a blessing that held the 40-foot layout of Butler Street right across the top. We created 5 lots. The ZBA wasn't happy with it, mainly due to the lack of a cul-de-sac and also the 40-foot layout. We heard what they said and came back with this plan here that now has a 50-foot layout, still encompassing the existing Butler Street layout, but now widens it to a 50-foot and proposes a cul-de-sac. The lots are still substandard. They still have 125 feet of frontage and about 28,000 square feet. So we're hoping that you will see this change as a substantial change that addressed their reasons for denial and give us permission to give it a shot again at the ZBA, Madam Chair.
right, thank you, Scott. Board members, questions?
Yeah, I have one. What is the requirement for the street size? I know we increased it to 50%.
Yeah, so the roadway layout is, in the subdivision regs, requires 50-foot layout.
So the requirement is 50.
Yeah,
It
the
was
requirement
40,
is
now it's
50.
50.
Yeah, which is what we have here. The issue we had previously with you folks back in the early summer was that Butler Street is an existing unconstructed way that's only 40 foot wide. So we're hoping just to keep the layout 40 feet as it was laid out back 100 years ago. So that was the plan that we showed you folks and that we went to the ZBA with. So this one gets us back to a 50-foot layout as required, 34 feet of pavement as required, the 6-foot side, everything is exactly as required under your subdivision rules and regs, just that the lots are short on frontage and area.
And as far as the cul-de-sac, is that up to par as well with the requirements
It
for
is,
size?
it's a 60-foot radius cul-de-sac, which again is what's required.
Okay, I have no other questions.
Madam Chair, if I may, Scott, just, we don't have a fire department representative here today. I don't see the fire hydrants. Could you maybe just point that out, or where is the closest one?
Yeah, right here at the end of the cul-de-sac, Mr. Sweeney.
Okay, and then beyond that, where's the next one?
There's an existing hydrant right across the street.
Okay, and what's that distance total?
It's 500, right exactly at 500 feet
Okay.
along the road, right?
And I believe, again, I don't work for the fire department, but I believe that's the distance between each one.
Certainly, and if need be, we could certainly add another one. If it's brought up at the ZBA, we would certainly be amenable to that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right, any other questions? This is open to public.
Yes, ma'am. Anybody who wishes to speak on this proposed return to ZBA, please use the raise your hand icon at the bottom of your screen and we will unlock your microphone. Again, if you hover over the bottom of your screen, the menu will open up and you'll see a raise your hand icon. And Madam Chair, I do not see anyone with their hand up at this time.
All right. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second?
All right, roll call. James.
Yes.
Matthew. Yes.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, return to ZBA, you're going to need all 4 of the voters present.
Okay. So I have a second from Matthew. Marty?
Yes.
Tony? Yes. Okay, there's all 4. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
folks.
Madam Chair.
Have a good night.
You too, Scott.
Thanks for the time.
Thanks, Scott.
All right, that was short. Scott's usually with us all night. We'll miss you.
Thank you. I've got a
All right, the site plan review for 1380 Main Street. We have GM2 Associates representing.
GM2, if you would have your party raise your hand so I can move you over. Mr. Baker. Mr. Sire. Mr. Pluff. Good Lord, you got a cast of thousands. Attorney McCluskey. Everybody should be coming over now. Madam Chair, all are in the room now.
Okay. So who is presenting this evening?
So Steve Sawyer here. Actually, it's actually Millennium Associates, MEI, GM2, actually no longer is involved with the project. I've been the engineer all along. I believe Steve Baker, the project architect, I think is going to introduce the project, and we're going to go from there. Steve, you here?
I am, but I believe actually Attorney McCluskey will speak first. Thank you,
Okay,
Steve.
great. You're welcome.
No, you're on mute, Attorney McCluskey. We can't hear you. Now I see the mute side on. We cannot hear you.
John, oh, there we go.
Yeah, I think that perhaps Attorney McCluskey is suggesting we should continue while he tries to work his microphone out. Good evening, everyone, Madam Chair and members of the board. I'm Steve Baker, principal in charge of BWA Architecture in Boston, and we're the architect for the project. I'm joined here by Michelle Auer, who's project architect for BWA Architecture, and you've already heard from Steve Sawyer, formerly of GM2, now Millennium Engineering, civil engineer for the project. We're pleased to be here tonight representing the Brockton Housing Authority as architects for replacement of BHA's Campello high-rise apartments. With that, if it's all right, I'd like to share my screen.
Oh,
Please do.
am I on now?
You are on, sir.
You know, this is funny. This happens to me that sometimes the first time, I guess they just want to see me. You stumble around, but I figured I did everything right.
It's usually Scott, so you're lucky.
That's why that's why I like live meetings.
Coming soon.
Shall I begin? Okay. Attorney John McCluskey representing the Brockton Housing Authority. And this is regarding the Campello high rise down on Main Street in Brockton. And we're making a grand effort to redevelop this entire project to build new apartment buildings in lieu of what we have when they're constructed, to tear down the existing ones, have everyone move in and make it a hopefully seamless project. This we're hoping to get this permitted and cited and funded this year. Last year we were before the Board of Appeals that granted a variance in a C2 zone to allow residential use. Interestingly enough, and not surprisingly, you know, back in the day, this property was just built without any zoning relief or anything like that. It was and not surprising. That's what happened in the day. But it's now become unworkable. The buildings are becoming unsafe, and it's just time to redo the whole thing. We went before the Board of Appeals last year, and unanimously, the board granted our request. The Housing Authority has been working diligently to get financing, and it looks like it's all coming into place. Everybody's been working hard on this. We've had meetings with the planning board and all of the members of the powers that be in Brockton. Everybody's in favor of it. I believe Attorney Susan DeCastro, the counselor, is in favor. She spoke highly of this at our meeting at the Zoning Board of Appeals, and we've gone through the planning board process, and everything is really looking like it's coming together to make this a wonderful project. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to the real people on the street, who are on the floor, who are making this happen and turning it into a great project.
Thank you, John. So I will go ahead and share my screen. Okay, can you all see it?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the project before us is the modernization of Campello high-rise apartments. The existing is two 10-story towers, which is affordable senior housing, deeply affordable senior housing, containing 398 apartments. And the proposal is to replace it with three new 6- and 7-story tower or buildings. And they will feature high efficiency systems and sustainable design features and modern amenities. I want to note that this is deeply affordable senior housing and it will be maintained as such. The current residents of Campello Apartments will have priority and the right to move into the new development as it's completed. I won't spend any time on why we're doing this project. I will come back to that if you all have questions, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to move directly into more information about the project. So what you see here is the sort of site locus, the area, the highlighted area in yellow is the site. It's about 6.2 acres. It is bounded by Main Street over here on the left, and it has a very small frontage on Plain Street to the northeast. The abutters are the BAT bus facility to the south. On the opposite side of Main Street is the Trinity Baptist Church and their parking. To the north are some commercial and residential uses, as well as a significant amount of industrial use here, including a property owned by the city and Brockton Housing Authority here. And then to the east is the Salisbury Plain River, and it's heavily wooded, as you can see there. So that's the sort of site context that we're in. I should note the site parcel includes 1362 Main Street, which is the old self-help fuel assistance building. And that parcel was acquired by BHA in order to make this project feasible. There are a lot of lines on this. This is very busy. The only reason I wanted to show you this is you can see the two existing buildings, A and B. And this blue area here, outlined by this blue dotted line, is the floodplain. So as you can see, the entire building B sits in the floodplain. And this is a significant consideration for us as we moved forward with design, because we may need to make sure that we are fully out of the floodplain. The siting is complicated because by that floodplain, the fact that half the property is in the floodplain, we also need to keep the two buildings in service because BHA has nowhere to put these residents during construction. So we cannot tear down the buildings until we have new construction in place in which to accommodate those residents. And finally, as if that weren't enough, you see this magenta here is an existing storm drain easement, city storm drain easement and outflow to the French Brook over here. And so all of those features presented significant constraints on the design as we moved forward. So moving on, what you have here is the proposal for the new campus. As you can see, it is a total of 3 buildings, building 1, 2, and 3. Buildings 1 and 2 are aligned along Main Street. Purposefully, they're parallel to, and they essentially provide a street edge to Main Street. I will come back to that in a moment. Building 3 is essentially sited where it would fit. Given the other constraints that I already mentioned, we had very limited places where we could fit building 3, and building 3 is sort of nestled in between buildings A and B here. We mentioned the water courses. You do have the Salisbury Plain River here, the French Brook along here, which is an intermittent water course. Those provide features for potential recreational opportunities. We're proposing a path along there as well as places for people to sit and enjoy this wooded area. The entrance to the property is off of Main Street. The primary entrance is this drive, which goes to a circular roadway here. And this then provides access. The main entrances to all three buildings are off of this drive, here for building 1, here for building 2, and here for building 3. I'll note that there's also a place here, pull out for a BAT bus stop to serve the residents. So this is intended to be the primary entrance to the site. There's a secondary entrance off of Plain Street. This drive currently exists, and this is intended to be drop off and parking for building 3. While there is a connection through the site for emergency vehicles, we have provided for a gate here, and the intention being that this gate would be kept closed to prevent this from becoming a shortcut from Main Street to Plain Street.
Good idea.
Here's a rendering, an image of the property seen from Main Street. I'll briefly touch on a couple of the issues around the building exteriors. As I mentioned, the buildings are 6 and 7 stories. The 2 on Main Street are 7 stories. They are clad in primarily in architectural concrete masonry down below and metal siding, 2 different types of metal siding above. These materials were selected for their durability and their long-term ease of maintenance. We chose several different materials in order to help break up the mass so that the mass of the buildings is more similar in scale to what's surrounding it, as well as providing different textures and shadow, and gives the buildings visual interest. So also note here, building 1 has this glass, what we're calling the turret or lantern on the corner. Building 2, which you can just see at the right here, has a similar matching turret. And the intention is that these provide a sort of welcoming entrance gesture into the site down that central drive that we mentioned before. Here's a view from the interior looking sort of northwest towards Main Street from that rotary that I was talking about. So you see the building 1, and you can see the interplay between the different masses and the use of shadow boxes at the windows, again, to provide some depth, a little bit of shadow and reveal on the elevations, which you can see from the shadowing shown in the rendering. And finally, this is a view towards building 3, again, from the front as you enter the site, if you were in a very tall vehicle. So looking back towards building 3 and towards Plain Street. Moving on to just very briefly on the architecture itself, this is the ground floor of building 1. And building 1 will have, in addition to the residences, will have a management suite for the Brockton Housing Authority, a significant community room and resilience center, both for the residents to enjoy, but also for the neighborhood in cases of heat or cooling emergency. And there will be a commercial kitchen provided in this space, which is intended both to serve these food provider who will provide essentially meals on wheels or meals on site for the residents of Campello Apartments. But the property is also sized in order that it can be used to provide meals to other social service agencies in Brockton. So this is an amenity that we see not only to benefit the residents of Campello Apartments, but also the surrounding neighborhood. Here's an enlarged view of that community room. So you can see a good sized community room here, intended to be able to provide space for much of the resident population at one time. That kitchen that I was mentioning here, and then some other related amenity spaces. Second floor of building 1, as you can see, it is second floor and up are really just identical. 1-bedroom apartments primarily. The proposal for the project is a total of 400 apartments, 398 1-bedrooms, and 2 2-bedrooms to accommodate people who may have special needs or a carer. And in addition at every building has a lounge and elevator and laundry spaces as needed. that's building one. Building two is similar, ground floor, again, some lounge and amenity spaces, and then primarily residential. Building two, upper floor. Building three, similar, primarily residential and some amenity space, and upper floor is all residential. Then finally, just briefly on a typical unit, you have here, this is the typical layout, one-bedroom apartment. These units are all designed to be, all of the units on the property are either fully accessible or adaptable for people with accessibility issues. So this is what we would call an adaptable apartment. And so it can accommodate somebody in a wheelchair with relatively minor changes. So you have a kitchen here open to the living dining with an eat-in tuck under counter. So that kind of helps maximize this living space in the living room. Generous bedroom will allow for full-size furniture, which the existing Campello does not because the units are too small. And then a bathroom that is large enough to accommodate a wheelchair. So in terms of accessibility features, as I mentioned, all of the units have some accessibility features. 20 of the apartments will be fully accessible from day one. All of the common elements are accessible to people with mobility limitations. Mention one other thing, highly efficient buildings. We're using triple glazed window for high efficiency, high efficient envelopes. These will have high efficiency electric heat pumps. So it's contributing to reduction of greenhouse gases, carbon emissions. We are doing gas-fired domestic hot water, but it is being planned for conversion to electric when that technology emerges. So in summary, we're taking what we think is currently a liability for BHA, which is to say Campello buildings are in disrepair, as Attorney McCluskey mentioned, are in very poor condition and cannot be maintained because they're in a floodplain. And we intend to provide a property that will be an amenity not only for the 398 or 400 residents of Campello Apartments, but also an amenity to serve the entire community and the city of Brockton. And with that, I will leave it there and allow you all to ask any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I may.
Very nice presentation. I'm sure I was going to ask first, Jim, what's phase one? Is phase one building three to accommodate the current residents?
Phase one will be building one. The phases will be done in the order of the buildings, the order that building number. So phase one is building one. And right now the intention, as John mentioned, we believe the financing is lined up to start building one construction, we hope at the end of this year. Phase two would be building two, which is the second building south on Main Street. And that would start, we hope, about a year later, depending on financing. And then phase three would start a year after that. Okay. And the intention is that after building one and two are built, the old building A would come down. And, it might be easier for me to show let me go back to screen sharing again.
Did you leave the plan up?
Yeah, we'll do.
Also see outdoor space for the residents, or I might have missed that.
Sure, let me go back. Am I not going back? There we go. So this building one is phase one, then building two. And then after building two, building A, which is currently sited right where my cursor is here, will come down. And that will allow us then to be able to finish the rotary. And then building three will be built, and building four and building B will come down. Does that address your question, Madam Chair?
Yeah, yes, it does. And what area do you have there's like park benches or anything like that?
So we have, every building has some space for the residents of that building. There's a small, for building one, there's what we intend to think will be primarily for smoking, but can be used by anybody here. We also have a community terrace off of the community room, which will be used here. For building two, we have a space here as well as a plaza outside the back here for use. Building three has some space here. And then, as I briefly mentioned, there is this walkway path along the river, and there is an area with benches here as well as benches along the river here, and some other space further up here. So there's sort of small gathering areas and places for recreation scattered around the site.
And when you started, thank you. When you started your presentation, you mentioned something about getting out of the water flood zone, or you hope to.
Yes.
What?
Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's plan A. What's if you keep what's, and when will you determine that, and what's the plan?
So the
Steve, I
the
don't know if
go
I
ahead.
should introduce. Yeah, so
Sure, Steve.
yeah, so as part of the plan is I don't know if I actually have a graphic up that kind of clearly shows it. I don't know if I can share for a minute. Is it hard to, let's see. All right. Can everyone see?
It says you're going to start. Yep, we can.
Okay. All right. This is an engineering plan, so it's very busy. A lot of information. So this heavy dash blue line, as you can see as I'm tracing, was the original floodplain, and here's building 3. And what we've done is we filled around building 3, and if you see this solid blue line, that's the new floodplain elevation that wraps around building 3. So what we're allowed to do, which we've actually already done and permitted through conservation, any work in the floodplain is regulated by the Conservation Commission, and we're in they call it an AE zone, and you're allowed to fill as long as you provide compensation area. And what we've done is we've basically moved the flood line on this property in order to bring this lower building 3 out of the floodplain. And also what we've done is we've lifted the first floor to be 2 feet, 2 feet above the floodplain, to be conservative. So this has already been well thought out, engineered, the grading taken in consideration, and along with the stormwater. So this was all, I think, one item is this has been submitted to the Conservation Commission, and as part of the Conservation Commission review, they send this engineering plan out along with my stormwater calculations to a peer reviewer. And as you know, so the design was all peer reviewed by Beta Group, who is the city's consultant. And we basically are, until they could approve it, we need a clean review letter that they concur with my calculations and design. So that, this has been contemplated and designed with extensive earthwork calcs and such. So I've been working with Steve and his team to make sure that the building is compliant. And you wouldn't be able to pull a building permit for building 3 unless it was designed properly and out of the floodplain.
All right, thank you.
All right, I'll stop share.
Jim, you had questions?
Yeah, I think we got to a couple of them. So this is 400 units. Is that what we said?
That's correct. 400. It's currently 398, and the
Okay, so
proposal
that was
is
going to be
400. Yeah.
so we're adding a few. So this is going to be staged in essentially 3 separate projects, right?
It's 3 separate financing applications.
Okay.
It's this mixed financing, it's incredibly complex, but it is one It is one contiguous site. It's being planned as one campus, but
Mhm.
there will be individual investors for each of the three buildings.
Okay. So I guess what I'm getting at is, senior housing, we honestly can't get enough of it. There's such a shortage of all housing. So as we move on, is there any way, if possible, or if it was in your, in your budget to add, say, even after phase one, if you wanted to, is that a possibility? Is that at all on the radar?
Can I speak to that?
Please, yes.
I'm sorry, if I could respond to that.
Sure, go ahead.
So we are limited here. We have actually tried to put some townhouses down along the road.
For the record, can we get your name and position?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thomas Tebow, Executive Director of the Brockton Housing Authority. I apologize. We have looked at this site. It really will not accommodate any other units due to the issues that Steve Baker spoke of and Steve Sawyer spoke of with the water. The long-term plan, and this has been presented to the city, once we do this, this gives the housing authority the authority to move forward and build another 398 units in other places. Our plan is to address some of our deficient state units, Kennedy Drive, Rainbow Terrace, and perhaps redevelop those and add units there. We're looking, again, this is, probably 5-10 years down the line, maybe beyond when I'll be around, but the plan is in place. We're working with the state. You are right. We have years-long list for seniors to come in. So we would like to see more units. The state would like to see more units. This lot will not accommodate it.
Okay. I like the plan. I think you guys, really thought this through. Since it does sit so close to Main Street, I'm kind of known for this. I would like to see some sconce lighting. That's about it. Otherwise, I think you've done the best with what you got. And that does it for me.
All right, thanks for the
Madam Chair?
questions. Go ahead, Marty.
Mr. Baker, I have to tell you that my sister-in-law lived in this building, or one of them. I don't know, I can't remember if she was an A or B. She's no longer with us for many, many years. And what a difference. This is amazing to me. The conditions she lived under were terrible. And my husband's also gone, her brother, and they would be thrilled to see these new buildings go up. So I just want to say thank you for such a nice job. They're beautiful looking.
All right, thank you, Marty. Any other questions? No, we'll
So-
open to the public. Oh, sorry, Matthew.
Sorry. Yep. So just before we go, I just want to say I love the work that you guys did. It was obviously very well thought out and planned. The presentation was great. I just do have a few questions regarding the current tenants. And I know that you said that they wouldn't be displaced, but with the new buildings come higher costs. Will there be higher, I don't know if it would be rent or what they'd be paying, but would that go up with the new buildings?
I can respond to
I'll
that.
defer to Mr. Tebow.
Thank you, Steve. No, the people, what's happening, so this HUD is involved in this also. They have issued tenant-based vouchers that will be project-based into these units. The people's income they'll pay 30% of their adjusted gross income just as they do now.
Okay, great. So a tenant that would say be paying $500 a month would still be paying $500 a month for a new apartment. It would just be based off their income.
Correct.
Okay, and the current tenants have first right of refusal for the new apartments.
Correct. And I do want to address another reason we're doing this. The cash flow through the tenant-based vouchers is much higher. It allows us to care for these units. And so we have plans to replace the electrical systems, and Steve can speak of it, we've been through this for so long, and we have a pro forma that does that. Current public housing does not do that. So this is a long-term plan for affordable housing in the city that I think we can be proud of and not go begging hat in hand for every dime we get to make sure that they comply with the state sanitary code, which is what we're doing now.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think this is great. Sorry, someone said something. I And then I know that you had mentioned that 20, I believe it was 20 or 22 units are going to be handicap accessible from the jump, and then others could be, manipulated to become more accessible to people. At whose cost would that be?
Any adaptation required by a resident, I believe, would be at the housing authority's cost. Tom, is it?
That's absolutely true. We do it all the time now. Reasonable accommodations, we do. Mr. Plouffe, I think, is on the call. He's our officer. We do them daily.
Great. And those are all my questions. And I just want to say that I'm very thankful that these types of programs exist for elderly people.
Thank you, Matthew. Okay, open to public.
Ladies and gentlemen of the public, if you wish to make a comment on this site plan review, please use the raise your hand icon at the bottom of your screen. And Madam Chair, at this time, I do not see a raised hand. I do
right.
have to say for the record that we have the city, the Department of Planning and Economic Development has been working with the Brockton Housing Authority for several months on this project and are very excited to see it get to this stage. And congratulations on your first round of financing. And we look forward to number 2 and number 3.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion?
Not yet.
Motion to approve.
Hang on just a second, Councilor Castro would like to speak.
Thank you. Let me interrupt your motion for a moment, Mr. Gallagher. This is Susan Nicastro, Ward 4 Counselor. I represent 1380 Main Street and all of the residents who live there. That's actually where Ward 4D votes when we have elections in the city. And I just want to say how fervently I support this. And I'd so like you all to support it as well. I go there and the buildings are just, they're past their prime and then some, and I'm being kind. And the idea that we can have these 3 buildings and parking space and walking paths and maybe even a garden, since some of the people are losing their balconies and like to grow things on their balconies in the warm months, is just stupendous. I had two questions. I'd like to know the number of elevators per building, and I'd like to know how, if any, how is the size of the units changing from the existing buildings to the new buildings?
Sure. If I might answer, there are 2 elevators per building,
Okay.
which provides some redundancy in case one goes down.
Right.
And the units are, Michelle, they're definitely larger. I believe they're about 5%, 5 to 10% larger. Michelle, do you know?
Steve, 25% larger.
Oh, 25%. I'm sorry. Forgive me. Senior moment. So they are significantly larger. As I mentioned in my presentation, the existing units really will not accommodate, the bedrooms don't accommodate a full-size bed.
Right.
And as I showed you in the unit plan, we can do that now. We also have space. There's space for a wheelchair turnaround in the bathroom and in the kitchen. So even in the units that aren't start as accessible, that's why they can be adapted. So the units are larger.
That's terrific.
If I could address the elevator issue, so it's 50%
Sure.
more elevators. All of the elevators are full size, which the fire department would appreciate, emergency personnel, because right now, one of the elevators is a half, I'll call it a half elevator. It does not accept a gurney. So it's a significant, why anybody designed the last one that way, I don't know, but it's a significant benefit to everybody, the first responders and the residents who are being responded to during emergencies.
Global warming has had an impact on the Salisbury Plain River, and that is what has changed the floodplain. And there's been terrible flooding there. You don't need to hear about it, but the first floor of Building B has been impacted. I think some of the electrical was impacted at times. We've been very fortunate that the buildings are still hanging in there. And so I'd be so grateful if you would support this. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
All right, thank you. We're starting with the motion.
I will restart my motion to approve with standard conditions. In addition to the following condition, the project must pass through site plan review prior to beginning both phases 2 and 3.
On the motion, can we add the sconce lighting to the front of the building?
Yes, also with sconce lighting in the front of the building.
Second.
Okay, roll call, James,
Yes.
Matthew,
Yes.
Marty,
Yes.
Tony, yes. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you
Wonderful
all.
job.
Next up, we have another site plan review for 1005 Belmont Street, Joyce Consulting Group. Who's representing for Joyce Consulting Group?
Is that John McCluskey?
That is, did I,
Yep, you got your hand raised. You're doing good.
And we can hear you.
this is the roadway project?
This is-
It is, yes.
Yes.
You ready for me?
We're ready.
Okay, thank you very much. This is the project for the old Carlton House, presently owned by Father Bills. And we've have a strong history at this property. We have presently 69 units of single unit, single person apartments for permanent housing for the homeless. My office happens to be right down the street at 1325 Belmont Street. I go by this property day in and day out, and I've seen how this has been developed. And what we're looking for tonight is for the approval of an additional building for 29 single units. We have this is allowed under the so-called Dover Amendment, and it's been well received as a not a resident of this neighborhood, but as an occupant or a user of this neighborhood. I see this as a great use for this property. We have an agreement with the building department. We've gone through the vetting of the required parking requirements for properties such as this. And we're in full agreement that there'll be 100 spaces. There's 100 units, or there will be 98 units actually, but there'll be 100 parking spaces. We've done a tremendous amount of improvements to this property, and I think really doing a good thing for the community. As you drive by the property, you just, you know, it's funny, as a hotel, or cars coming in and out, it's a difficult location on Belmont Street. Cars are always moving fast, but our parking capacity is 100, or will be 100. And I think there's probably on a daily basis about 10 to 15 vehicles there a day, including the employees of the roadway project. There's educational facilities there. There's probably a history of about 10% of the occupants driving. For a variety of reasons, they don't drive and they don't have cars. So I look at this as a great assistance to the city of Brockton and for the homeless society. Great use of this property, great locations near public transportation. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to the experts who are proposing to build and run and operate this facility.
Hello, my name's Michael Joyce with Joyce Consulting Group. Before I get started, I just noticed that Emily Rothschild is also in the lobby. She's part of the project team as well. But let me share my screen and we'll get going on the presentation. Okay, so as Attorney McCluskey had mentioned, this proposed project's at 1005 Belmont Street. It's right at the intersection of Belmont Street and Coolidge Street, right by the on-ramp of Route 24 north. It is directly or on the same parcel as the roadway apartments. So this is the existing roadway parcel building, and the proposed building will be in this location. Here's another aerial view of it. So the proposed location is in the area of kind of underutilized parking area to the eastern corner of the site. The site currently has and this is another view of it as well. The site currently has a 69 unit supportive housing building on it, with over 100 spaces. So it's a 3.25 acre lot, and the lot slopes to the rear. There's wetland in the back that you'll see in the next plan. So the entirety of the site slopes to the rear, and all the stormwater runoff ends up ultimately in the wetland area. As such, this project was in front of conservation, or still is, as a matter of fact. So we're anticipating a approval letter on the January 29th hearing. We've had it peer reviewed by Beta Engineering, and I believe we've addressed all their concerns. Oops, sorry about that, went the wrong way. So this is just the proposed demo plan. It gives you an idea of, we'll be removing all this asphalt. Some of it in the upper level will be going back in place, but the lower level will be just building footprint, and outside of that, it'll be restored with like a restoration mix, a wetland restoration mix. So it's overall, the project will result in a decrease in impervious area of about 7,500 square feet. We'll maintain the same access points to the building, to the parking area from Belmont Street, and there's a easement over off of Coolidge Street as well. Circulation kind of works around the building, and the proposed building would be this location here. It's a 3-story, 29-unit building. Originally, when we first submitted this to technical review back in May, it was a 31-unit building. It was a little bit closer to the wetland area. Technical review's comments were to create a more substantial stormwater system, add a fire hydrant, and get conservation's blessing, start that process. So we've done those things. There was also a couple other minor things. We had a gravel driveway that we removed and paved a portion of it just to access the generator. So those were the main things that we heard from feedback from technical review. When we went to conservation, they asked us to move the building away from the wetland. In doing so, we decreased our footprint. Originally, there was some office space on the first floor of this building. It was replaced with units. So now we lost 2 units. So we went from 31 units to 29 units, and we lost a lot of the office space. I think there's 1 office now on the first floor, whereas before it was all office space. So that's what brought us to this proposal here today. We're proposing, as you can see, a substantial stormwater subsurface infiltration area. We're adding also catch basins throughout the site in order to catch runoff from the entirety of the site. The stormwater runoff will be decreased by 40% in all storm events, in accordance with the stormwater bylaw. We'll also be making new utility, sewer, water, and gas connections. The proposed fire hydrant is here. There's actually an existing hydrant as well on Belmont Street, right here. And then this is the on-ramp area here. There is actually a fair amount of vegetation after the property line before the on-ramp. So that's really the extent of it. The building will be ADA compliant. Is there anything else I'm missing? We have a landscape plan here. There'll be substantial plantings in the front. There's actually a second sheet to this landscape plan as well I didn't include, but there's a landscape island in front of the existing building. And technical review at the last meeting had asked that we put some more substantial screening plantings in there. So we've, I believe, put a lot of arborvitae's just across the entirety of the landscape island to provide some screening from the front of the existing roadway apartments to Belmont Street. So with that, I will pass it off to Mike Murata of Westwork, so he can give you a rundown of the building elevations.
Hey everyone, I'm Mike Murata from Westwork Architects. So I'll just take you briefly through the elevations and the renderings that we have here before us, and I can also take you through the plans quickly. So your first view, number one, is the entry view, and you can see to the right-hand side the existing roadway 1 building, and then to the left is our new proposed building. It's a mixture of two siding materials. There'll be a metal cladding and a cementitious siding, and that's to break the volume up into to make it look like 2 distinct volumes. And you can see that in the image in number 2. That's the north elevation. Almost if you were on Belmont Street, that is the view you would see. Of course, there's a lot of screening already there on the site. The rendering number 3 is the back part of our building. That is the northeast view. There you can see we've added also a CMU base. So we'll have a hardy base at the first story. And then there's the cementitious siding above. Image number 4 is the covered patio that we're providing for the project. That'll be just off of one of the accessible entries. And that's a metal and cowl wall system for the canopy. The building also overhangs, and that allows for the bike racks to be covered also near the handicap accessible entry. The image number 5 is your southwest view. That's looking back as you are turning around the corner of the building into the additional parking area. And there you can see the covered patio in that image, and also gives you a nice view of how those 2 different materials play off of each other. And lastly is image number 6. It's a little bit of a close-up of the 2 buildings together. And this, you can see existing, it's that whole asphalt parking area. And now you get a sense with the additional building and with the additional landscaping and trees, it starts to break it up. It gives it a much more residential feel, and it's really a nice complement to that existing building. Certainly, it's just right now, it's just an unused piece of asphalt parking area. So Mike, the next slide. Here's the first floor plan. You can see the site plan attached to it. The first floor is 7 units. It has 1 handicap unit, 1 sensory impaired unit. It has a pretty small common area. It has a small meeting area, residential office, as well as a common laundry and a lobby with a mail. It's a 3-story building, but we are going to provide an elevator for the building. Each unit is typically just under 300 square feet. Each unit will have just about an adaptable bathroom, small area for a bed, and then a little kitchenette. And that's total of the 300 square feet for the studio efficiencies. The handicap units are slightly larger, a little bit over 300 square feet. Mike, you can get the next slide. It's the second floor, and it'll be typical for the third floor as well. It's 11 units, and pretty much the same units, flow across the buildings. They're very efficient. They're well laid out, and you get 11 units on then each of the next floors. Mike, you can hit the next slide. That's the third floor, which is generally the mirror of the floor below. And the next slide is the roof plan. The roof plan, we have 2 different roof pitches. It's a solar ready roof, and the condensing units that will be proposed on top of the flat portion of the roof, those will have a parapet that'll screen it. Although you really can't get that much of a view from the street for the roof line, but we're still going to screen it for anyone that's walking on the street. And next slide. This is the architectural elevation. This is one of the accessible entries. This is the elevation that faces the existing roadway 1 building. And we do have the other elevations, but we can also just stop right here for any questions that the board may have, or John Lano, if you have anything that you'd like to add.
Thanks, Mike. Good evening, everyone. John Lanham, the Chief Operating Officer at Father Bills in Mainspring. They already went over the project for the facility. The only piece I would add just is that we're really excited about the opportunity to continue to develop permanent supported housing for individuals who have experienced homelessness in the community, provide long-term efficient places for people to live. And we really like this style of building to be able to provide private, safe space for individuals to have their own kitchenettes, their own bathrooms. It's not a rooming house, it's not a shared living facility, but really is, their own apartment that they can, move forward with their life. So, as Mike had mentioned, there will be case management that's available for the participants in the building. With the office space on site, we will also have 24/7 operational staff on site to support the guests or the tenants with whatever they need for the stabilization in their units. And just really looking forward to moving forward with this project, and happy to answer any questions that you have.
Well, thank you all, gentlemen. Very nice presentation. Definitely another strong need in our community. I'm just curious. So there's a long-term residents. This is another 60, did you say? 31 unit to the 69. Does case management help them move on to different homes? This is kind of like a transition apartment until they can, because we have a greater need than just 31 more units, which will take this, but we need more.
Yeah, this housing is targeted for the people who have long shelter stays, often have disabilities, whether it be mental health concerns, medical needs. So it's really meant for the people who may be stuck in shelter for a long period of time. But the case managers absolutely work with people on housing plans for after this location. We just don't put a specific timeline to say you have 2 years or you have, this like specific transitional timeline. But part of the housing plan for every individual in our housing is to look at what is the next appropriate housing opportunity for you. Some of the people that are in our housing are there for 20 years. Others move on very quickly to their own fair market rent or their own other subsidized units kind of as they're able to.
And so when you say subsidized for this type of level of living, who actually pays for this?
So it will be, so we get the funding either through HUD or through MRVPs for subsidized housing for those units. We have our state application in now, so we'll be working with the state on what funding sources will help support the units there, but the individuals who are coming into these units will pay 30% of their income towards rent.
Okay. All right, very good. Excellent. Thank you. Questions from the board?
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I could. So I guess collectively in Brockton, how many total units once the Main Street building closes will there be from Father Bills?
Good question. So I think as an agency, currently we have 700 permanent supported housing units, but that's covering Norfolk and Plymouth County. I would say in Brockton, we are probably for permanent housing units right around 200, I believe.
Okay. And you just mentioned the area that you cover. So is that average out more or less than other areas that you're servicing?
So our kind of main hubs of activity tends to be Brockton, Quincy, Weymouth, Plymouth. Those are the cities that we have the highest density of housing at the moment, but we do have units in Hingham, Wareham, Stoughton, really looking at the whole both counties to look at, okay, where's an appropriate place for individuals that would like to be housed in those areas.
Okay, and that leads me to my next question. After this, what other projects are on the horizon? Is there more to come for Brockton, or are you going to disperse it throughout other areas?
Our pre-development pipeline is looking at other areas. So we're currently working on a project in Quincy with one of our property management companies and development agencies. We're looking at we're going to be breaking ground on a project or starting a demolition of a project in about 2 or 3 months in Stoughton, converting a former motel there. So we are absolutely looking in other communities as well.
Okay. Is there a success formula with how many people in need in one place? It seems to me that if you had a bunch of people trying to maybe recover or get on their feet, um, having a massive population or a larger population might not be the best idea, or to kind of hang around the wrong influence. This is your business. Does that have any impact?
We've not seen it that way. We actually, so we like this size facility. You know, the 30 to 35 unit facility tends to do really well for consolidating the staff who can be on site to support those individuals. But also, what's great about these units is that everyone has a door they can lock. They have their own unit. They can engage with one another in common space as they would like, but they also don't have to share a bathroom or share, you know, a common kitchen the way some of the older rooming houses are set up. So it does allow the tenants to kind of choose how much they want to engage with their neighbors or the people that are around them. But we do find that there is quite a bit of support that they provide to one another, with, you know, connecting to resources, making sure that they're supporting each other, sometimes just giving a ride to someone or just for social engagement.
Okay. And I noticed through the plan, there's a very small common area, which leads me, the representation said that this falls under the Dover Amendment, and I'm imagining it falls under the educational requirement, maybe. So what is the educational requirement with very little recreation space or common space? Or what are we doing there in terms of education?
Maybe I can jump in on that. Jim, thank you very much for the question. But remember, there are two buildings here, and will be a campus such that there'll be staff covering both facilities, both buildings, and there'll be educational facilities in the other building as well as counselors coming in. You know, we have, as I mentioned, if you look at the parking going by any time of the day, most of those people are staff people who are helping the residents, giving them guidance, getting them set up on various things in their life to hopefully improve their lives. So it doesn't necessarily have to be just in this building. There is a small area in this building, but the idea is not to segregate one building and have all of things happen for those residents. It's a community, so that it's all happening on campus, and we've got a lot of space for that, and a lot of on-hands people on the property doing those good things.
Yeah, the only other piece I would just add to that is I think when we talk about case management, for us, it's really looking at what are those skills for independent living that need to be, help that person identify. And for some people, that might be cooking classes, or cooking, like how do you, if you've been in a shelter for many years, and you now have your own kitchenette to cook in, okay, let's talk about nutrition. Let's talk about how to, budget your money to buy the appropriate food as needed. There might be people that need help with just self-advocacy, getting the right connection to medical resources, getting set up with the right employment services. So for us, we very much look at what does that individual need for their stabilization, to ensure that they can remain safely in this unit and then hopefully move on to other housing in the future.
Okay, and how many units are currently there in that first building?
69.
69. So you just said the sweet spot was about 35 that you like to service. Is this going to be stressing the resources that are currently there?
No. And remember, Jim, I mentioned the Dover Amendment, and that's a statewide statutory item under Chapter 48, Section 3. And Brockton also has its own own ordinance that speaks to this exact type of living. We've had meetings with the Brockton Building Department just to go over everything that we're doing, and they're fully satisfied that what we're doing here is in compliance not only with Chapter 48, Section 3, but I believe it's 20. It's either 20. I don't have it in front of me. It's 2729, or I believe it's 2723. The Brockton ordinance, which is almost identical to the Dover Amendment.
Well, I ask these questions because we want people to succeed. Obviously, we want your plan to work. So, it's reasonable to ask, is this going to be effective? And is it going to be stressing, the seams? So that's why I ask.
Oh,
I appreciate the question.
Nobody faults you for that. That's a great question. And as I say, I work in this community and I work right down the street from this place. And I've been helping Father Bills for many years, and I honestly think that this is going to be a great thing for the homeless community in the city of Brockton, and a very low impact on the community.
Right. I agree. Are there questions from other board members?
No.
All right. Is this open to public?
Yes, the site plan review is open to the public, and I believe Councilor Griffin is in the room also. Would you like to speak now or wait and see if others would like to speak?
I'd be glad to speak right now, Mr. May. Good evening, board members.
Thank you, sir.
I am not in favor of this project going forward at this time. I've received a lot of calls from residents, business owners in that area who have a lot of trepidations, not only with this project, but the shelter that's going to be opening up approximately a quarter mile down the road. That is a very densely populated area with businesses, and there's also some residential in that area. And we really don't know what type of mitigation may be needed when this facility on Manley Street becomes fully operational. And I think it should be very premature to give this the green light to get going until we really understand and see if there are any.
May I comment on that?
I don't think you need to just yet. Maybe after. Is there anyone else who wants to speak? Mr. May?
Ms. Stevens, I'm going to open up your microphone while we try to figure out what is happened to Councilor Griffin's feed. So Ms. Stevens, you should be able to address. Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
I have the same issue. Manley Street hasn't even opened yet. We don't have sidewalks for pedestrians. I myself, I don't go anywhere. I am rarely out on the roads. And twice I almost hit somebody that was crossing the street from that hotel or from the new roadway project to the mobile station. And I know I've heard of other accidents. Something needs to be assessed or dealt with regarding the foot traffic. And I understand only 10% of the population have a vehicle, which doesn't congest the traffic light pattern, but the foot traffic is an issue. And I'm concerned about the Manley Street traffic as well. I want to see the projects succeed. I want to see the the shelters be available for those that need them. But I think we need to keep these people safe, and them walking across the street where there's no crosswalks. And I'm literally saying they cross over the islands where traffic is getting onto the highway, getting off of the highway, and 2 lanes of traffic going in either direction. It's dangerous. So please, address those issues before you just say, go ahead. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Well, these are adults crossing the street, not safely.
That's my main issue, yes.
Any other hands up, Mr. May?
Ladies and gentlemen, if you wish to speak on this project, please use the raise your hand icon. And Madam Chair, oops, one just popped up. Hang on. Pat Jacobson, hang on just a second. You should be able to speak now, Pat.
Thank you. I'd like to direct just a couple of comments or questions to the manager of the facility, or from Father Bills, if he's there. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. You've had some experience now with that location. What's your experience been so far? Have you had a lot of community complaints about the facility generally, and how have those been handled?
Honestly, no, we've not had many calls or complaints about the community or from the community about the people who are there. It's overall, I think, been very successful, with 69 individuals who have been living there in their apartments. We've had many that have been able to move on to their own independent housing from that space and, accessing case management and really doing some great work there. I think compared to probably how it was operating when it was a motel, I think that it's a, much quieter site than it has been in the past. And certainly it's providing permanent tenants who, have a vested interest in that area and that community. I think we have staff who are on site 24/7 in that building, and we do take, concerns seriously. So, if we get a call that there's a shopping cart that's left out front, or, maybe too much congregation, like we do talk to the tenants about that. We do want to make sure that the building presents well for the neighborhood, fits the mold of what Brockton would like to see in that area. That's why we do try to spend additional time on landscaping plans and the exterior of the space, because we really want it to be a welcoming, nice space for both our tenants and for the neighborhood.
And you have obviously mentioned several times you have 24/7 staffing. I'm assuming if there's a community issue that they'd be readily available to talk to people in the community if some problems do arise, which they can, obviously.
Sure. We have staff, on site in the lobby that, you could certainly speak to if there's concerns, but we also, our administrative office is right down the street on Belmont, on 430 Belmont Street, which, we're happy to talk to people there if it's more business related that we could, address from the administrative team.
And just one final question. When do you anticipate that the shelter will be opening on Manley Street?
We're currently looking at a springtime opening at the moment. We are working on that. The project is getting very close to opening now. We are waiting on some switch gear to come in that has delayed the project slightly, but we are hoping for a spring opening.
So it seems like then these two projects are going to kind of come one after the other, not at the same time, essentially.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Those are my questions. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
May I make a couple of comments?
Sure. Just let me add, because I live at this area, and so I'm at that light often. I think that this is a great need. It's not a really densely populated area. It's in the woods next to a highway. I do hear Veronica's concern, though, if people are trying to cross the street to get to mobile. So if you have rules for the tenants when they are afforded an apartment, should take that into consideration. I don't think a crosswalk or anything can be put there to already congested enough. But Attorney McCluskey, what would you like to add? No, nothing we've already heard, please, because it's a really good plan.
Thank you. First of all, I don't know exactly how many years the existing 69 units have been there, but I go up and down Belmont Street all the time, and I've never seen anybody crossing Belmont Street. And then there are sidewalks going east and west from this project over the highway, and then off, obviously, east down into the business community. And so we've operated successfully there for many years, and this is an increase in the number of people, but that should not indicate any comparative increase in problem, because there is no problem at this point. This is a great location. It's a great project for the people in need. We're a community of over 100,000 people, and I'm in my practice, by the way, is not criminal. It's not going to court. It's helping people in their day-to-day living problems and planning. And I can't tell you how many families I see with homeless individuals. It's just it's saddening. And this is a great thing for the city of Brockton to take and help these people.
It is. And when people are asking about the Manly project, that Manly project and this project are separate, so we should save that for when Manly presented in front of us. And I do see a crosswalk. I just did pull up the area view. And if these folks, if they need to be trained like children to take a left out of the building, cross that crosswalk, and then there's another crosswalk leading towards in front of the VA hospital, so they can cross safely. But other than that,
Madam Chair, if I could, if I could suggest an upgrade to an RRFB beacon at those crosswalks, I think the point of added, I mean, they're all without cars. They're reliant on walking. So I think a reasonable accommodation for those that walk, especially at that one of our biggest intersections, would be to upgrade that with RRFB beacons.
to the existing crosswalks.
To the existing crosswalk. Yeah, you don't have to,
Yeah.
not installing it's the hard part. Upgrading it would be a little bit easier. I mean, I think the DPW would tell you better than I would, but that's been my experience. It's already there. You don't need a study, but you probably could upgrade it. And I think that's a reasonable request.
I think that crosswalk is in front of Avon Auto Brokers, so direct the residents that way.
I just had a quick question on that. They don't have one there now. The only reason I ask is I know Mass DOT upgraded that intersection not too long ago.
It's not a rapid flashing, no.
Okay, I was just curious. Yeah.
It is under MassDOT control. That's something that we can discuss with them. I know that it is a signalized intersection with pedestrian crossing signals, and they generally don't see RRFBs or rectangular rapid flashing beacons at signalized intersections. But there might be something that we can do on the western approach where there's not a crosswalk. That is the easiest path for folks from residents can try to take into the mobile. And one of the reasons why there's not a crosswalk on that section is because it aligns with the current curb cut that goes into the old
Gas company.
That goes into the old hotel. So if that curb cut were to be closed, it might be possible to get a grade crossing or a signal crossing. If you could unshare, I could reshare and just talk about what I was talking about. Ta-da. So we have a fully signalized intersection here with pedestrian signals. Where we don't have them is here. And if you can see, if you were to extend a pedestrian crossing off, you come into the middle of this curb cut, and MassDOT would not install a pedestrian crossing here. However, if this curb cut were closed,
right,
forcing the pedestrians, or it would then allow for MassDOT to install a crosswalk here. That's something that I'd be happy to discuss with them.
Well, that would end up being extra stops for the traffic.
No, there's already a stop there, ma'am.
No, it's already light there.
You have a stop here.
Right, but there's crosswalks, you see. There's crosswalks.
Yes, but
already
what's
in place.
happening is people are going this way where there is no crosswalk.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, there needs to be rules, and they need to be a little smarter and not jaywalk. And benefit from their apartment that they have to live in while they're afforded an opportunity to move on. It should just be in the rules. It shouldn't add more another reason to delay traffic. My opinion, but anyway, no other questions from the community?
Madam Chair, I don't see any other hands raised at this time.
All right, is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a comment if I could. We've had a lot of angst around the homeless population in Brockton. The city council voted, the mayor vetoed. We have got to have more facilities for people to transition them from the streets to a real home. So, and I have seen, and I live in that area too, I've seen no problems with the building as it is. It was a rundown hotel before that. And, Rob, you're right about that curb cut. There's like an extra curb cut there that's kind of
Yeah.
dangerous, to be honest with you. But I'm in total favor of this. It looks like a beautiful facility. I do have one question though. The building looks a lot taller than the original one, but it's gonna be, is it gonna be at an angle that it won't look odd? I was trying to tell from the map. They're not directly next door to each other, but angled on the property.
Yeah, I don't know if Mike wants to answer this, but it's 3 stories versus the other one's 2. But it is kind of a little bit, the first floor I think is a little bit lower than the existing one. It's tucked back, so I don't think it's going to look
Okay.
massive, or I think it's going to look fitting with the site.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I also want to add that the fact that somebody there 24/7 makes a huge difference. So I am in total favor of this, and I would make a motion.
I was gonna ask Marty, on that note, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I would be happy to do that.
Okay, is there a second?
On the motion, can we please add to have MassDOT upgrade crosswalks wherever necessary?
Sure.
Yes.
Yep.
Second.
All right, roll call. Marty,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
Matthew,
Yes.
Tony, yes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're on to definitive subdivision, 0 West Chestnut Street, Meadow Woods, Matt Flaherty Way. Gallagher Engineering is representing.
Gallagher Engineering, if you could raise your hand so we can see you all. It'll make it easier to move you over.
I moved him over already.
Oh, he did. All right, thank you. Oh, there he is.
Okay. Good evening. Frank Gallagher, Gallagher Engineering in Foxborough. And we're here tonight on a continuation for our proposed 2-lot subdivision off of West Chestnut Street, Matt Flaherty Way. I'm the design engineer. We had a hearing about a month ago and we took in some comments from the board. And what I'd like to do now is just turn it over to the applicant, Benny Albanese, to respond to some of those concerns that were expressed at the last meeting. So I'll just move out of the way.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I have provided the planning board with an information package with documents and different deeded easements and a memorandum addressing a lot of the issues that have come up. And subsequently, after the December 3rd meeting, I submitted another memorandum addressing each of the bullet points that came up at that meeting. Did everybody receive those?
Yes.
Did everybody have an opportunity to read those?
I did. Any board members, if you have not?
No, I did not receive it.
You didn't receive the package?
No.
All right. Well, there was some extensive information in there. Nevertheless, the most recent memorandum, has everybody read that? It was in response to the December 3rd meeting.
Yes, actually, that's what I thought you were referring to. What other packet were you referencing, please?
There was a substantial package with copies of plans and previous plans, deeds, plans of easement, a memorandum of different matters that had been addressed. Nobody received that?
Madam Chair, if I can jump in real quick. They were all included in that email that I sent you guys with the updated report, all the supplemental materials, and all of the comment letters.
Yeah, I printed off a lot of things here, so I must have
See,
it.
I provided hard copies of everything, so no one would have to download them and print them, but apparently those weren't distributed to you. It answers a lot of questions. So apparently no one has read it. All
What
right.
I do have and read thoroughly is the response by Attorney Benjamin Albanese, legal counsel for Patricia Path Realty regarding planning board meeting December 3rd, which is several pages.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Well, why don't I read that then for everybody else's?
Well, everyone received this because they're on my email with me.
Yeah.
So the board members you do have this.
Yes.
Okay.
Did they read it? Did everybody
Yes,
read it?
I read it. That's what we just got today, Tony.
So does everybody have any questions about what was enumerated in that memo?
Madam Chair, if I could.
Just 1 second, Jim. Well, there is confusion on the length of this road, this dead end street, because you're saying 687 feet, but the measurement you're measuring to the middle of the cul-de-sac versus to the end of the sidewalk. And I'm just going to get hit onto the points of what needs to be discussed here and kind of cut out a lot of the stuff we heard last meeting and we have in notes and things like that. So can we just address the length of this dead end street exceeding the 700 feet?
Sure. I mean, our plan shows that the rules and regulations say 700 feet. That it doesn't. It is unclear as to where that begins and where that ends, or the the formula for. Is it to the back of the sidewalk? Is it to the front of the cul-de-sac? Is it to the middle of the cul-de-sac? It's unclear as to that, but to the middle of the cul-de-sac is 687 feet. That's pretty much in compliance with your rules and regulations.
Can you pull up the plan just with that cul-de-sac?
Can we pull it up? Sure. Okay. Let's see.
And then while you're pulling that up to address that, where you actually measure the end of this road, it's my understanding the standard practice has been it's not in the middle of the turnaround, but where the end of the cul-de-sac ends, to include any curbing or sidewalks.
Well, where is that regulation?
I was just about
I
to
couldn't
finish.
find it anywhere.
I was just about to ask Mr. May, who has been deciding where the end of these roads actually measure to?
It has been standard practice of the engineering department to measure it from the back of the pavement, where the sidewalk or the back of the right of way.
Okay, so there's no rule saying that is not correct.
But there's no rule that says it is correct.
Right. That was the point I was getting to.
That's what engineering has told us.
Yeah, that's the point I was getting to. There's no rule saying it is or isn't. But I don't see a rule that it says it's in the middle of the cul-de-sac either.
Right. So how do we deal with that? I'd like to point out also that provision, if you got the package that was provided initially, it shows the recorded plans of easement, and those plans of easement show a right of way through West Bridgewater onto a public street in Brockton. In other words, it provides for a throughway and not a dead end. We put the cul-de-sac in there as a provision that would be the turnaround until such time as that throughway is built. So whether or not there ever needs to be a cul-de-sac is at question. And the measuring of the cul-de-sac is at question. Our position is it's a fully conforming plan. The plan is not in violation of any of the rules of the planning board.
Questions from the planning board while I pull out some of my notes.
On the subdivision plan, can you, Mr. Gallagher, identify where parcel C or parcel 3 ends, the dividing line between parcel 3 and parcel 2 and lot 2?
Let me just.
It's a little bit clearer than the engineering plans.
Yeah. Yes, parcel 3 basically extends to this point and follows this line, and then it's everything west of this solid line that I'm tracing right here.
So parcel 2 is above it, and lot 2 is above it, and parcel 3 is below it?
That's correct. And it extends into this area as well.
Yes.
Is that the only issue, the length of the roadway?
I don't believe that's the only issue.
Well, I've enumerated some issues, and we'll come back to the length of the roadway. There was a question of notice to the city clerk's office. I dropped off a copy of the receipt from the city clerk's office saying what day and what time it was received. I don't know if anybody has been shown that, but it was dropped off at the planning board office, left on Isaiah's desk. The notice to the West Bridgewater Planning Board, that was addressed in my memo, and I don't think that should be an issue any further. The position that we required a planning board notice to the West Bridgewater Planning Board was based on Chapter 40A, which is zoning and variance and special permitted use, and that doesn't apply here. What applies here is Chapter 41, and that does not require that an adjacent town's planning board be notified, and I don't think there's any gray area there at all. The notice to abutters was an issue. The abutters were all notified. The only abutter in West Bridgewater was essentially the same people, the same entity as the Brockton property. So if we'd be required to send a certified mail to ourselves, that sounds a little absurd. And let's see, traffic concerns on West Chestnut Street were addressed. I don't think that's a real issue at this point. Denial of access to West Bridgewater, that's a whole nother issue. That access to West Bridgewater is a common law right of way. It's a very well-established principle of real estate law, as well as a deeded right of way. And the planning board does not have the authority to interrupt or obstruct any easements that are on private property. So that should not be an issue. And I'd like to point out that this roadway was approved under site plan review 2020. And it was approved unanimously. And that roadway goes all the way through to the West Bridgewater line. I have the minutes of that meeting and who voted on it.
So I think we all understand that this has been going on for a long time.
Yeah, too
It
long.
currently, we also, the board, we did seek the advice of our legal counsel, and at this road is exceeding per council by 40 feet, so it's 740 feet from West Chestnut Street. So it is exceeding the length
Who
of
made
the
that
dead end.
determination? Who
We
made that
have
determination?
our counsel, our legal counsel,
Who is that?
Megan Bridges.
Okay,
All right. And then in addition, back in 2021, I'm not sure, I can't pull out what the subdivision. This
Wasn't
must
a
have been the meeting
subdivision.
from the city of Clark Closure. So from 2021, there's also information from the law department that does speak to the law that in any city or town in which a subdivision control law is in effect, no public way shall be laid out, accepted, or constructed, and no municipal service or improvement shall be constructed in a way within a subdivision. So I believe that's speaking to this. You're ultimately trying to connect this road into Bridgewater through the subdivision, but there's a
no,
subdivision control law.
there's no subdivision at this point. There's no subdivision until you approve it.
But that's, well, I'm just making sure you know that there is a law that prevents it, if that's your
No.
plan at a later time.
There is not a
right
law
now-
that prevents it. And let me point something out to you.
But right now, let me just finish, please. So right
Okay.
now, our issue is that I have that this road is, this dead end road is at 740 feet, which exceeds the rules and regulations.
So
That's the
you're
information presented
you're gonna
to-
deny it on that basis?
I said, this is the information presented to the board right now.
Okay.
So any question, did you want to add something? Or did you want board members to ask any further questions?
Well, I'd like to add something. I would like to draw your attention to section 4, design standards of the city of Brockton Planning Board, rules and regulations. Section B1C. It says provisions satisfactory to the board shall be made for the proper projection of streets for adjoining properties that are not yet subdivided.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what this projection is. It's a projection on the street to connect to those areas that are not yet subdivided. How does that coincide with what you're saying? You're saying there's a law that provides for not allowing an access through an already recorded easement, that the city can block an easement? Is that what you're saying?
No,
What is it that you're saying?
not that the city can, that the law prevents a public way being laid out through a constructed way within a subdivision. Not the city, the law.
The law, it cannot be
is
laid
there-
out through a constructed way.
And you said we're not here for a subdivision, but we are. It's a definitive.
Yes, we are here for a subdivision.
Well, I
what
misheard you then, because I thought you
I
just.
I don't understand what point you're trying to make. That roadway, first of all, was approved under site plan review. It was approved by you in 2020. You were on the board.
Was it a subdivision at the time?
No, it was site plan review. It was a roadway.
A roadway, but not a subdivision.
it's a private road on private property does not come under subdivision control. So you can't block that roadway. You can deny the subdivision, but you can't block that roadway. You're hell-bent on blocking that roadway, and it flies in the face of very well-established real estate law.
Other questions, board members?
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I could, you mentioned the traffic study. How many residents was that traffic study based on?
The traffic study isn't based on residents. It's based on the traffic study was done by tie and bond by the city of Brockton DPW, and the Department of Transportation did it on behalf of the Old Colony Planning Council. So those numbers are created by the state, and it was created by engineers hired by the city.
My question to you is, how much traffic is coming from that street in the study? There must be a number determined.
How much traffic was coming from
the street?
The proposed street or on West Chestnut Street?
From the proposed street would be the reason you're doing a traffic study, correct?
No, we didn't do the traffic study. The city did the traffic study. They did
Well,
the
from whatever
study
numbers you got.
routinely. It's done. It was based, the numbers I provided
You said
at
you
the
said the
last
difference.
meeting.
You said the difference would be 0.003. Am I
No,
correct?
0.005. In other words,
Okay.
0.5%.
So what was that 0.5% based on from what? We
That
know
was based, that was based on a proposed subdivision in West Bridgewater of 31 houses.
that's what I'm looking for. So it was a 31. Okay, thank you.
That was what my calculations were based on.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So just
So
to
it-
be clear again for the board members, the current board members, none of you were here back when they first came to the board asking us for approval for this road. It was a roadway. It wasn't a subdivision.
Right. Yeah. If it was a subdivision, it couldn't have gone through site plan review.
But now it is a
Madam Chair?
subdivision. Yes.
A little better of semantics, but what was originally approved was a 50-foot wide drive that went to the city line. What is in front of us today is a road which can only be created through the subdivision process by the planning board. And that road is supposed to be under 700 feet. And right now we have, without a waiver, and we have 740 feet. So it exceeds our current requirement, our current
Well,
standard.
First of all, your term drive has no meaning. The meaning of a roadway, roadways don't have to be created by subdivision control. Private roads on private property can be created at any time. The plan that you approved had sidewalks, had curbings. It wasn't a way or a drive. Those terms have no legal meaning whatsoever. It's a roadway. If you look at a definition of a roadway, it's a roadway. But let me read from the minutes of the meeting from that time. That was January 7th, 2020. And there was Robert Palaggi, Craig Pina, Larry Hassan, Tony was there, Reggie Thomas, apparently, Rob May. And this is how it was proposed with granite curbings and sidewalks. That's not a way. That's not a drive.
Oh.
That's a roadway. It was proposed.
You proposed this drive with a granite curb and potentially fully conforming, but that was not something that was a regulation or requirement of the board.
No, but it was approved by the board.
So what is being proposed now, because
All
that
right,
was
so
never constructed,
here's a
that
quote.
was never constructed, and what we have right now in front of us is a subdivision for 2 lots,
Right.
1 parcel, and a
Yep.
road with a cul-de-sac that is 740 some feet long.
All right, so
And that there is not a request for a waiver, of the formal request for a waiver. So I'm reminding that to the board.
At this
Yeah.
point, there's not a formal request for a waiver because we've just discovered that somehow arbitrarily that measurement goes to the back of the sidewalk on the back of the cul-de-sac, and that was determined by somebody arbitrarily. So now we're dealing with a roadway that's too long. We can do one of 2 things. We can ask for a waiver, or we can amend the plan to provide for 40 feet less. And are you saying to me that you don't routinely waive something that's this de minimis? Is that what we're saying here? Or are we looking for an excuse not to approve this?
No, we're looking to follow the rules and regulations, and a waiver would need to be applied for. We've not approved a road past 700 feet without a formally applied for waiver.
You approved a road longer than 700 feet on January 7th, 2020. It's not a roadway that's part of a subdivision, I'll grant you that, but it's a roadway.
Okay, so this is a subdivision. So this is a subdivision, and this dead-end street is exceeding the length that's allowable without a formal waiver request.
All right, so we'll provide a formal waiver request. Is there any other roadblocks to this? Is that the only issue?
That is the issue that is in front of us tonight.
That's the only issue in front of you tonight?
That is being discussed. Hang on just a second.
Yeah.
What about the, I think they had some notes, I'm sorry, I got so many attachments for this meeting, I have notes everywhere.
And just reminding that applying for a waiver doesn't necessarily mean it will be granted, but that is a board determination.
I'm well aware of that.
Is it accurate that the turnaround also is drawn incorrectly? It doesn't have the 6-inch granite curbing and gutters around the turnaround?
We
Yes,
have
it
the
does.
granite curb, but it's in an easement area.
Madam
But
Chair,
that
could I
may
make a
not make an
comment?
issue.
Yes, sure you can.
Madam Chair, this is the most convoluted case we've ever had. And I don't see any, I've gone round and round and round. I've read everything there is that I can get my hands on, and it's still convoluted. We need to follow the law. You said it yourself. So how do we find out what that exactly is? I can't in good conscience vote on this one way or the other. I just can't.
Well, the information the board has is that it's 740 feet, so it extends the length of a dead-end road.
Based on what?
Based on the rule without the road exceeds 700 feet, the dead end exceeds 700 feet, we're at 740 per the information provided to the board. And there has not been a waiver formally submitted. And those are the rules, Marty.
Well,
Okay, then he has to apply for a waiver, period. Right?
And if they don't grant the waiver, we'll revise the plan to bring it back.
Okay. Any other questions from board members?
I have a question.
Well, I just wanted to say, to clarify, that if you are applying for the waiver through the online application process, the right of way needs to include the entire roundabout.
The right of way.
And then once that, or not roundabout, I keep calling it the cul-de-sac circle, the turnaround circle. So part of that circle on the top of the half moon that's on the top of the lot is on top of is actually part of lot 2. And
Yeah,
so
lot two
if
grants
that becomes public right of way, how much space do you lose out of lot 2?
it's an easement. If it's an easement, you don't lose any frontage and you don't lose any square footage. That's an easement. Cul-de-sacs are routinely easements. And when they're no longer needed, those easements are dissolved. And that's pretty well established law also. And seeing that there's already provisions for a throughway here, that easement probably won't last very long. Technically, that cul-de-sac isn't even required at this point. There's 2 means of access and egress.
Okay.
Have you
Any
seen?
other questions?
It
from
would be
the-
required for a subdivision.
No, it won't be. It won't be required for a subdivision if there's 2 means of access and egress. And that's already been provided for. If you looked at the plans, they're recorded plans. If you looked at the plans showing the easement that opens up that access to Ash Street Extension, then there's 2 means of access and egress. And it benefits the people that live at the end of Ash Street Extension because they can't get large vehicles and emergency vehicles down to where they live. So it works both ways. I'm sure the fire department would be glad to see that built. So that cul-de-sac doesn't even really need to exist.
Well, I'm under the impression that it does need to be within the right of way. The round.
Is a cul-de-sac required if there's 2 means of access and egress?
But we don't have 2 means of access and egress.
Yes, we do.
We only have 1.
No, we have 2. Did you look at the plans?
I have looked at the plans.
And how can you say there's not 2 means of access and egress? They haven't been built yet. They haven't been built yet. They haven't. You have all the plans showing the easements. There's an easement that goes around in a semicircle and comes back out on Ash Street, and it serves the purpose for the people at the end of Ash Street, and it serves the purpose of creating 2 means of access and egress on this roadway, and it's a roadway. So you're telling me we need a cul-de-sac when there's 2 means of access and egress?
Questions from the board members?
I'm good.
All right, open to public.
Oh, here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen of the public, if you wish to comment on this proposed subdivision, please use the raise your hand icon and we will unlock your microphones so that you can comment. And I have a P. Lynch that I am allowing to chat. And P. Lynch, would you please identify yourself fully?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so Here we
And for
go.
the record, your full name is?
This gentleman has
Mr. Lynch, for the record, what is your full
the
name?
planning board member said, creates as
Mr.
much confusion
Lynch.
as possible.
Excuse me.
Mr. Lynch, if you want to address the board, we need to know your full name, please. If you can unlock your mic now to give the board your name and continue with your statement.
There it is. Got it. Can you hear me now? Now I'm there.
Yes.
All right. Again, my name is Peter Lynch. I live on 31 Chester.
Thank you.
Well, this is deja vu all over again.
Chestnut Drive.
He goes back and forth. What this is all about is creating a road so he can build a massive development. Ash Street is nothing more than a cow path. So that's not, and he doesn't have permission there. And this has gone on for years. This project we thought went away and now it's back. And you can clearly see here, he's going back and forth. What this is all about is he wants to build a road to get to that property in West Bridgewater. Where that property comes out to also on West Chestnut is definitely the narrowest section of West Chestnut, and would create a massive safety issue as far as I'm concerned. I can't tell you enough how the residents of this area are opposed to a road going in. He did get what he's referencing again is the 986 road that he was then was by the city solicitor. It was approved, and then the city solicitor said, no, it can't be longer than 700 feet. And that's where on March 5th, it was disallowed.
That's wrong.
And then when they agreed to 700, then he dropped building the houses and said, I need 200 feet to get back to the line. So again, create as much confusion as possible so that hopefully this will slide by you. So that's what this is all about. And it's really ridiculous, because if this road ever were to be built, this whole area is going to turn into a nightmare. And West Bridgewater already disallowed it. So I'm hoping that you don't pass this, and I hope this can once and for all be put to rest.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr.
We
Lynch.
sent the letter to you, to the board, giving extensive of what would happen, because it's not just this property, it's properties behind it that will get developed after this one. So I think that was all that I had to say for tonight.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Lynch.
Anybody else from the public?
Anybody else from the public?
Please refrain from anything repetitive that
have-
Mr. Lynch said.
Kathy, I'm opening your mic. Kathy, could you tell us your name and for the record?
Good evening. My name is Kathy Nowacki, and it's actually Trina Alexnovich. Kathy is my wife. We are the actual abutters at 39 Rachel's Way. And that easement that's been talked about is on our property. And before buying this property, I researched it. That easement is for a public service line. It's not a roadway. So I don't know how he can include that in this plan as a roadway, because my understanding is it's either a sewer pipe or some other type of public service pipe. So that's the first thing I want the board to be aware of. The second thing is becoming a homeowner here in 2017. So that's 7 years ago. I've been a part of all these meetings. I want to advise the board, because this is also a reflection of people paying attention to this project. In 2017, this project actually crossed West Chestnut Street to put in either a water pipe or some other public service line. At the time, none of our elected officials were aware that this pipe actually went in. They had no police for detail for this. And this pipe went across with no idea what type of materials were used, or without knowledge of public officials being aware that this was going in. And the biggest reason from, I believe, the permit that was used to put this pipeline in was back at 27. So the thing is, the project has been going on before 27. He has altered, this plan has been altered, I don't know how many times. The project people are not above going around whatever the city does, as evidenced by this pipe going across West Chestnut Street that nobody except the developer knew about. So I'm pointing out just two very simple things that the board should be aware of, and also understand I didn't take lightly to the fact that our elected officials did not know about this pipeline going across West Chestnut Street. And the second thing being the developer using a permit that was 10 years old. So again, if you go back and research this, these are facts. And again, asking the board respectfully to please go back and look at some of these issues and realize that this project has changed and changed and changed again. And that even without your approval or with some approval, they will skirt this issue to try to get what they want. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I do want to point out, though, that the easement that is that was being discussed runs north and south. The sewer easement runs east and west. So the applicant has proposed or has created a new easement that runs into West Bridgewater. So it's not to be confused with the sewer easement that you're referencing. Who is next? Ms. Stevens, I'm opening the microphone for you.
Good evening again. I reiterate everything everybody else said. I won't say it again, but I wanted to thank the planning board for just getting the measurements down pat, because last month, that was one of the things that was critical. The other thing was, I did pose the question. The developer indicated that the property abutting this lot on the West Bridgewater side was also owned by the same property owner. And it's my understanding that the notifications need to go beyond any lots that are connected by ownership to notify the West Bridgewater boundaries, the property owners, beyond what that owner has. But Marty said it right. It's convoluted. It is so messed up. This is the developer's shell game with this. And I'm glad to see that you guys are onto it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. I have, hang on just one second. I gotta move somebody. And Pat Jacobson. I am granting you permission. Pat Jacobson, you should be able to unmute your microphone now. Pat Jacobson.
Oh, I think I did it. Hello.
There you go.
Good.
There you are.
I managed to do it the last time. I guess what I'll start off by saying is I'm not going to, reiterate the last, 15 years that this has been going on, but I just would like to make a couple of sort of simple statements, if I could, about this project. I've never really understood what Brockton would benefit to gain by allowing this developer and these homeowners and these landowners to use the only access, the only access through Brockton to build a huge development in West Bridgewater, which will benefit West Bridgewater immensely, I would think, with tax revenue and everything else. So what Brockton gets out of it is a ton of traffic, and the next step will be they're going to have to use our utilities. So that would be a strain there. And for people who think, especially Mr. Albanese, that there would not be a huge impact on traffic, I would invite him to try to get in and out of West Chestnut Street right now during any time that's not, 3 o'clock in the morning. It's absolutely impossible. It will put a huge strain. I'm a trustee for the Chestnut Woods Homeowners Association, which we are about the property. We have, and I'm sure when the 27 homes were built 20 years ago, there certainly were probably some people listening right now who objected, but every single piece of that property is in Brockton, and we all pay a whole lot of taxes to Brockton. So I would think before anything is done to allow these people to extend that road and give them any access at all to this project I see no way at all that it's of any benefit to the city of Brockton. And that's just sort of what I wanted to say tonight.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jacobson.
You're welcome.
Rob, is Kyle Holden from Conservation?
Kyle is here, but we have one other person from the public, and that's Linda. And I'm going to open up Linda. And Linda, can I get your last name, please?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, Linda Lynch.
Thank you, Linda.
You're welcome. I just wanted to expand upon something that Peter Lynch said. When this all started and we became involved, and I outlined this in a letter to the planning board, but I'll be very brief about it. The project was approved for the 700 feet, but what the applicant left out was all of the subsequent things that happened. One of which was, once he received the 700-foot approval, he retracted the 2 or 3 houses that he was going to build and then tagged on another 286 feet because the project went from 700 feet and then subsequent to approval, it was 986 feet. We were at every meeting. We've attended every West Bridgewater meeting. He likes to say things in one town, but not in the other. So, residents have to be running back and forth to be sure that they're accurate. And in West Bridgewater, they've refused approval because they need a road from Brockton. But the other thing is, for those of you who have not attended the West Bridgewater meetings, is that there are other families involved in this, not in this particular project, but that's the overall situation that we've all dealt with over the last several years. Once he gets an inch, he takes a mile. And once he gets approval in Brockton, he says, oh, no, I don't have to build the houses. I no longer have a subdivision. This going back and forth about, is it a subdivision? We've all heard this song and dance before. It was a subdivision when he applied for the 700-foot road, but then he, for those members who were not there at the time, then he retracted that. Then he took Brockton and West Bridgewater to court when he didn't get what he wanted. And as I understand it, he lost. So, all of us who live in this area, we communicate, we all track this together, and we all feel the same way. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Linda. I have Counselor Griffin who has joined us, and he has been promoted to a panelist so he can direct the board. Actually, if you stop sharing the screen so we can all see each other a little bit better, that I would appreciate it. But Counselor Griffin, if you want to address the board.
Oh, thank you, Mr. May. And again, good evening, board members. I'm not in favor of this project. It just doesn't fit the area with the development and the traffic concerns. I've spoke to a lot of the residents who have spoken before me and heard their concerns. I've actually been in their neighborhoods, and they actually showed me the property and the concerns that they have about it. And the plan itself is still unclear. And there's just a lot of mitigation or potential mitigation that is known now, but there's also a potential of some mitigation down the road that we might not be quite aware of at this present time. So for those reasons, I urge you to deny this Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Griffin. Madam Chair, I do not see anyone else with their hand raised at this time. So this is last call if you'd like to speak. Oh, sorry, Councilor Castro, please excuse me.
And
I didn't see your
Eli,
hand.
one moment too. I don't know if you're gonna consider, Kyle wouldn't be part of the public, but please add him after, Councilor Castro goes. Thank you.
Yes, if the board has questions for Kyle.
I'm happy to let Kyle go first.
Kyle, the board has some questions for you, so jump on
Sure,
in.
yeah. For the record, this is Kyle Holden, conservation agent for the city of Brockton. Here really just to answer any questions the board has concerning this project from the Conservation Commission kind of angle. So please ask away.
Well, I actually thought that you had some new information for us, since I think the last time this was reviewed by Conservation was 2016.
Yeah, so the just kind of broad summary, the Conservation Commission issued an order of conditions for this project in 2017. That original order that was the plan that was approved in 2017, that order is still active. The applicant received one extension from the Conservation Commission, and then through the COVID tolling, and then most recently the governor's extension of land use permits in November 2020. November 20th of 2024 does extend that original order of conditions from 2017 to current time. I think it would then expire sometime next year. Well, I say next year, 2025, I believe is the current expiration date for that 2017 order of conditions. So the order is still active, but it is, I guess, good to note, Frank, this is mostly directed to you, that the order approved, the plan that was approved under that 2017 order is not the same plan that's being proposed here. So any changes that you are potentially get approved tonight by planning board or in the future, you would need to go back to Conservation Commission with any changes from that 2017 site plan that was approved by the Conservation Commission.
Mr. Holden, has
Yes.
any of the work that's been done on the site now, there's been some work done on the site now, is that in conformance with the order of conditions?
So I went out to the site last Friday, and so the wetland crossing has been installed. I did note that there was on the plan that's been submitted to the planning board, there is a let's see here, a stone culvert that drains into the wetland that was not approved on the 2017 plan. I did send out a letter to Mr. Gallagher and Mr. Albanese yesterday, kind of detailing the concerns that I have, and that will be handled, at the next Conservation Commission meeting on the 29th of this month.
Thank you. Are there any board members? I know other board members have questions for Mr. Holden.
I do not. Thank you,
I do
Mr.
not.
Holden.
And Counselor, I do have Kathy Nowicki has raised her hand one more time. Would you?
Let her go.
Yes, ma'am. Kathy, you can unlock your microphone now, please.
Yep, I believe I have. My name is Kathy Nowacki. This is the exact question that I had at the December meeting, was how is the water plan for the runoff going to affect the wetlands? We already have the wetlands come all the way to my property, like literally to my back door. So with the building and also with the runoff plan, which it sounds like was not in the original plan from 2017, I'd like to know, how do I get a copy of what needs to be remediated or what Mr. Gallagher has to do to move forward? Because I would like to get a plan for myself. That was my question and one of my biggest concerns, being the abutter, not just of Chestnut Woods, but of a individual property owner that is going to be affected. I already feel, with no proof, that just with the amount of work that's been done, the water lines are already raising close to my house. because of all the work that has already been done. I cannot prove that, but I'd like to know, where do I get that done? Where do I get a copy? And how do we stop the processes until Mr. Gallagher remediates this properly through the laws legally?
Thank you. If you contact Kyle Holden tomorrow or by email at kholden@cobma.us, or call the planning office at City Hall, and he should be able to handle that for you. Counselor
Thank you.
Nicastro,
Good
you're
evening.
ready.
Susan Nicastro, Ward 4 City Councilor. And I oppose approval of this plan. I think there's a lot that's wrong or misleading about this plan. Most notably that the road length exceeds our requirements in Brockton. There's issues regarding sewer main that I actually passed on to the board and to planning office a couple of days ago, that has not been mentioned, but I think they're very important. Lot 2 isn't big enough without the cul-de-sac land, and so for all these reasons, and also, and very importantly, the word easement's being thrown out and stuff, but a roadway does not include the easement. The roadway has to stop at 700 feet. That's our rule. And an easement, it's superfluous to be on that plan. If anything, it only gives them an argument in the future that it's on an approved plan. Oh, we should let hundreds of cars pass over it. So I think your best bet, my suggestion is, this is not an approvable plan. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with all of you. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I do not see anyone else with their hand raised at this time.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? No second. Okay, well, Mr. May, this is the first, so.
There is there a second motion? Don't all jump at once.
So it's a board member, you can make a motion to approve or deny for a second.
Motion to deny.
You're switching your first motion to deny?
I'll retract my first motion, and the motion now is motion to deny.
All right, is there a second? Marty?
Madam Chair, on the motion. Is there anything that we can look to that any city department, preferably the legal department, that would send us in the right direction?
Yes.
There's an awful lot of opposition against this.
We all received in the email from Evan, one of the attachments was from legal.
Yeah, but that was in 2021. Am I wrong? Wrong?
No, it's from current. It's dated January 6, 2025, and it was in the email sent to you.
All right, so if you wouldn't mind, tell me what that said.
The rule, the regulation is the dead end has to stop at 700 feet, and this dead end exceeds that rule and is at 740 feet. So it does not meet the rules and regulations.
All right, and that is from the legal department?
Yes, ma'am.
City solicitor.
Right, it's from Megan.
All right, then I will second Jim's motion to deny.
Okay. Roll call, James?
Yes, deny.
Marty?
Yes.
Yes, what?
Yes, deny.
Okay, Matthew?
Yes, deny.
Tony? Yes, deny. All right, thank you, everyone.
See if we can ask for a waiver.
next.
Okay, is there any
Hello?
other business for the planning board? Yes, Mr. Gallagher, yes? Who is trying to speak?
Okay, well, now I don't know.
Is Isaiah
Well-
on? Well, there's, yes,
Can we submit a waiver, a formal request for a waiver?
yes.
Okay.
With the
so
new application.
With a new application?
Yes, the board has closed this case now.
Oh, okay. Why don't we do short? Huh? All right.
That's no sense.
Isaiah, can you send the attendance slip out in NA for Yolando, please? Get that out to us by tomorrow if you could.
Will do.
And do you have anything that needs signature? I think I saw an email.
I do, yes.
And so board members, the department is now in that little building
Thank you.
where the Chamber of Commerce used to be, right next to City Hall. If you're facing City Hall, it's to your right.
50 School Street.
Okay.
Edison Building.
Yes.
And we can come by, there's certain hours or it's just full 8 to 4?
8:30 to 4:30.
Okay. All right. If there's no other business, is there a motion to adjourn?
To adjourn?
Second.
Okay, James,
Yes.
Marty,
Yes.
Matthew,
Yes.
Tony, yes. Adjourned. Good night, everyone.